Everybody, this is Dream, and before I get started in the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this particular big ol' main slate for Sunday, week 4 here. We got a nice slate, lots of good games available. So let's go ahead and get into the players themselves. At quarterback, Josh Allen is my top option here. He's been pretty solid so far for Buffalo, and this game should be pretty high scoring. He should be in line for another 30 fantasy point game. I think he's got that kind of upside in this game as well, and he should be throwing the ball quite a bit. Then we're going to look at Jalen Hurts. He's been really solid this season so far. I've enjoyed playing him all 3 weeks, in fact, and this is a situation where he's not as ideal because of the defense, but I still think he's in a pretty good spot here, and I like him in this matchup as well as my second favorite quarterback. Then we're going to look at Lamar Jackson. He should have a high-scoring game here. He runs well and has some good upside. Though Buffalo has been a decently good defensive team, I still think he's too hard. He's pretty much matchup-proof. Then we're going to look at Justin Herbert. If he does play, he's going to be somebody to take a look at here. Obviously, his upside is a little bit capped here, but he had 21 fantasy points last season against Houston, and he should be able to do well in this particular matchup if he does play. Then Kyler Murray for Arizona against Carolina. He's in a pretty solid spot. He's been playing pretty good so far this season, and I look for him to have some upside in this game. He should score around 20 fantasy points, which is a little bit lower than some of the other guys, but he does have some solid safety potential here if you want to not pay up for Hurts or Allen or Jackson. And then Derek Carr, he does have some upside here, but he hasn't been all that great so far this season. He is throwing 2 touchdowns every game. He does have some great wide receivers and stuff, so he is somebody to take a look at, but he hasn't really had the big breakout game. He scored last season 11 and 24 points, fantasy points against Denver, so he is a little bit capped, but especially that game may be pretty low scoring, but he does have some upside on this particular slate. And then Marcus Mariota, he should be able to get 15 to 20 fantasy points in this game for Atlanta, but he's just a cheap option that you could utilize if you're just desperate for a good value here. In the running back situation, we do have Jamal Williams. Let's see here. For Detroit, he's my top option. He's averaging he averaged he had 13.4 fantasy points last season against Seattle. He should get 10 to 15 rush attempts in this game and also have a touchdown potential. He's had 4 touchdowns on the season so far. He will need it in order to pay off here, but he's a good value option on this particular slate. Josh Jacobs is a guy for the Las Vegas I think is in a pretty good spot. He's actually been pretty decent despite the fact that they do throw the ball a lot. He does have some potential for receptions, but he doesn't honestly get that many targets. But if he can score 10 to 15 points or get a touchdown, that will really give him some upside on this particular situation. Saquon Barkley is obviously in a good spot here for the Giants. He's been playing pretty well this season, with the exception of the second week where he didn't do as much. He still gets pass opportunities and rushing attempts, and he's going to have touchdown potential in this particular matchup. And I do like him on this particular slate. He should get playing opportunities here. Christian McCaffrey, if he does play, he's going to be a guy that, he's a touchdown potential every game, and he should be able to get over 100 yards in this particular matchup. But of course, he desperately needs to play for him to really pay off here. But he did have 26 fantasy points last season against Arizona, so he's definitely somebody to take a look at. Austin Eckler for the Chargers, obviously a guy I really like on this particular slate. He hasn't had a big, massive game yet this season or scored a touchdown, but this is a particular situation where he should have some good opportunities to do so against Houston, and so look for him as a good option there. And then finally, Najee Harris for Pittsburgh. Now he started the season off pretty rough, but he did get a touchdown last week, which really did help his points, and he'll have some more opportunities this week here against the Jets, who are just completely not that good. So with that said, let's go and get into the wide receivers now. We're going to start with Richie James. Some value options here. Richie James for the Giants. He's actually been pretty decent so far this season. He's basically just been a pretty 10 fantasy point game situation guy. If he can score a touchdown, that's gonna upside him here in this particular situation. Johnson for Pittsburgh, Dante Johnson is a guy that I do like here. He's actually had 3 really good games despite the fact that Pittsburgh's had trouble moving the ball. He is going to get eight or 9 targets in this one and hopefully get a touchdown. If he can get a touchdown, he'll really pay off. His price is too cheap not to give him some good upside on this particular situation. Then Cooks, oops, Cooks for Houston. I really like him in this matchup, and he had a really good game in the week 1. The last 2 games, he had a lot of targets, but he didn't get the catches. So if he can correct that and get the catches, then he'll have some opportunity here for a pretty good, solid game. But he has been kind of hit or miss from that perspective. Then Diggs for Buffalo. He's in a great spot here. He has a really big upside depending on what kind of game he plays. Overall, I expect him to get 20 or 25 points in this matchup. And this is third game. And his third game wasn't super ideal, but he gets plenty of targets, so he's going to have plenty of opportunities. And he's Josh Allen's favorite option. A.J. Brown is a guy I really like here for, I'm going to mention that guy too, but for Philadelphia, he's become one of the guys that Jalen Hurts likes to target, and I definitely like to target him this week as well. He's in a solid matchup here against Jacksonville, and I think he's somebody you have to take a look at. Then we're going to look at CeeDee Lamb for Dallas. He's pretty much the favorite option for their young quarterback, the backup guy, and Cooper Rush, that is. And he's averaging 11 targets a game, and he's going to be a guy that if he can get a touchdown, he'll have potential for a really big game. And it's a pretty good matchup for them as well. So then we look at Tyler Lockett for Seattle, another guy I really like that's pretty inexpensive. He's been pretty solid this season with the exception of the first week. They should be able to score some points in this particular game, and if he can score a touchdown, that'll really boost his upside. And then Devontae Adams for Las Vegas, obviously a top option. He's been a little bit boom or bust this season so far as he's getting used to it, and a couple of the teams have really tried to keep him from getting receptions, and he hasn't, he's been very inconsistent with, getting a good amount of the targets turned into receptions, but I think he's still somebody you have to take a look at this week. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's had 3 really solid weeks, and he has touchdown potential in this one. Obviously, he is questionable, but if he does play, then I think he's somebody you have to take in consideration here. At tight end, there's really one really good option and then a bunch of average options. Mark Andrews, he's pretty safe here. He's had 3 really good weeks for the Baltimore. Obviously, the first week was average, but the last 2 have been really good. If he scores touchdowns here, he has a lot of upside. His price is really high, though. So you do have to, consider that when you're deciding if you want to pay down someplace else to utilize him. Dallas Go Dirt for Philly is in another good spot here. Obviously, he's going to need a touchdown to really pay off, but he has some potential in this matchup, and Jalen Hurts really seems to like him. Then Everett for the Chargers. He's a little bit tougher matchup, but he's had 2 out of 3 games really solid. It's really hard to find a lot of value here at tight end, but he's somebody you could take a look at. Pat Freemouth for Pittsburgh. He's been pretty decent so far this season. The only real issue here is targets and stuff. But he does get enough that makes him a viable, kind of Hail Mary option. Excuse me. And then finally, Darren Waller for Las Vegas. He's done pretty good so far. He doesn't really get enough targets, but he does have, touchdown potential. And if he can get a touchdown, that'll really help him pay off. At the defensive situation, we're going to take a look at the Steelers. They're probably my top option against the Jets. I mean, the Jets are just garbage, and the Steelers do have some upside here, and so I think they're in a great spot here. The Packers have a good, tough game against New England, but New England isn't as good as they used to be, and the Packers have had some pretty solid games here, and so I think they have some potential in this matchup. The Dallas Cowboys are also in a good spot here against Washington. I think that last season they had 22 and 24 fantasy points against Washington, and so I think they're in a good spot in order to have another game like that. They're probably my favorite defense based on the price and stuff on this particular slate, so you could definitely utilize them. The other team that I like are the Bears against the Giants. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with Saquon Barkley, but overall, they've been really solid, and so far this season and last season against the Giants, they scored 21 fantasy points, and they're very cheap. So if you want to pay down here at this defense, you can do that with that particular situation. So with that said, I think this is a really good slate. I think that there's plenty of good options, and I really do like the slate, and I think it'll be fun to build a variety type of lineup here, and you should be able to stack some of the teams as well. So with that said, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. Feel free to leave any comments below if you have any questions about any of the players, and have a nice day, guys.